Our preview for the 2025 New England Patriots. Their offseason in 60 seconds. Hired Mike Vrabel as their head coach. Josh McDaniels as their offensive coordinator. Terrell Williams, formerly of the Lions, as their defensive coordinator. Also have Thomas Brown, Todd Downing, Doug Marrone, and Ben McAdoo on their staff. Spent a ton of money in free agency. Milt Williams, 4 years, $104 million, 63 guaranteed. Stephon Diggs, 3 years, $63 million, 26 guaranteed. Carlton Davis, 3 years, $54 million, 34 guaranteed. Harold Landry, 3 years, $43 million, 26 guaranteed. Robert Spillane, 3 years, $33 million. Morgan Moses on a 3-year, $24 million deal. Smaller deals for Garrett Bradbury, Mac Hollins, Clavin Chasen. They lost Jacoby Brissett, Jonathan Jones, Devon Godshaw, and Joe Milton this offseason in a variety of signings and trades. In the draft, Will Campbell fourth overall, Travion Henderson in the second round, 38th overall, wide receiver Kyle Williams in the third round, center/guard Jared Wilson in the third round, Craig Woodson, the safety, and Joshua Farmer, the defensive tackle, both in the fourth round. Derrik, I think I know your answer to this, but what are you most excited about in watching the 2025 New England Patriots?
Well, if I was being really obnoxious, I would say Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say year 2 of Drake Maye in what feels like a more real offense than last year. I think I went into last year being really excited about Drake Maye, the player, but you looked at the roster he was given, especially on the offensive line, and it was just like, what? And I think Alex Van Pelt was a fine play caller, but he was also a relatively, he was not a very high profile play caller in the way that we all know that Josh McDaniels can be and has called very good offenses. So Drake Maye getting what feels like more of a real chance with potentially some more explosive players behind him, a left tackle that is probably not going to get him killed to the same degree.
He's an NFL offensive line, hopefully. Even if it doesn't come together, even if it all doesn't click. Alex Van Pelt was fine last year. We have disaster situations for quarterbacks in a variety of different ways. Sometimes it can be structural and situational. That was not the case with the Patriots last year. They were not embarrassing in how this thing was put together. The offensive line was the reason that the New England Patriots were a horrendous situation for a young quarterback. It is one of the worst offensive lines talent-wise I can remember watching in the league in quite some time. Even if it doesn't hit this year, it is not going to be that.
It's not. And the part of this that I'm most excited about is the down to down, even though the end numbers for that team were not very good. The down to down for the passing game was good. Drake Maye's success rate was league average-ish. And for among rookie quarterbacks over the past couple of decades, it was actually one of the better marks in the league. It's just that the explosive plays weren't really there. And then he was still taking a good number of sacks, getting some turnovers and stuff like that. But if he can get a little bit more help, not getting obliterated in the pocket, and then maybe Stephon Diggs makes a few plays. Maybe Kyle Williams really steps up and makes a few plays. Maybe Travion Henderson takes a screen or two and really pops it for a touchdown. That can be the real difference of this offense going from, okay, they're decent at getting us 5 yards. Can you get 15? That's to me the difference.
Yeah, the fact that this was even a respectable offense when you look at some of the numbers after Drake Maye got in there with the state of the offensive line and the pass catchers being Hunter Henry, Pop Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte, I think there's reason to believe in even league average circumstances, Dave, that Drake Maye can take a significant step and be one of those guys that we're really excited to watch each week.
I mean, it's a classic case of a team just throwing resources at the wall because they have the cap space and the draft capital. When you're that bad, you pick at the top of every round, you could sign a bunch of free agents. And in the ideal world where Drake Maye becomes one of these franchise quarterbacks and he's still quarterbacking the Patriots in 10 years, we'll look back on this team and be like, they were pretty bad by the standard that we have now. It reminds me, you go back and look at it's not a 1-to-1 because Drew Brees was not a second-year player, but the supporting cast in New Orleans when Sean Payton and Drew Brees got there, it evolved so much and became such a more high-powered thing. But if this is the starting point for who we hope that Drake Maye can be, it's enough to unlock that. And then 3-5 years from now, we'll worry about putting him with, his all-pro caliber talent.
It reminds me of the 2019 Bills, right? The Bills spent less
money. That's a better one
but
because Josh was a younger player. Yeah.
He was a second-year player, and they went from Robert Foster to John Brown and Cole Beasley. And that may not seem that important. And I know 31-year-old Steph Diggs will talk about this and Kyle Williams, but there is a chance that we see a significant step with this group, even if there are no proven stars that have been added to the equation here.
That is so good because there was a time where John Brown in Buffalo was like everybody was excited about that. And that seems crazy now because the standard is that much higher in Buffalo, but you got to start somewhere.
Dave, what are you most excited about watching with this version of the Patriots?
Well, since Derrik didn't mention it, I'll just say when you make over the defense the way that they did, like there's plenty to be excited about. It starts with the corners, like Christian Gonzalez and then Carlton Davis. You just got two guys that can man up and make life easier on everybody else, especially Gonzalez, obviously. I mean, we think of him as a truly ascending guy who's on that short list of great corners. Having two guys like that just makes life easier on everybody else. And I really felt like Mike Vrabel walked into the front office with Elliot Wolf when he got there, and he was like, just bring me a bunch of heads. And I mean that as a compliment. But that's what they did. I mean, it is not a surprise to me at all that Harold Landry's on this team after spending so much time in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. That's a reunion that makes sense. Coaches love to make vibe signings, like guys who
you get one.
Yeah.
You get like one vibe signing with somebody that you know from a previous stop,
like,
and Harold Landry was the one.
Bring me the guy that plays the way I like to play, that understands the tone that I want to set, and we'll go from there. Robert Spillane, I love Robert Spillane. He's such a fun player. He's violent. He plays like he just wants to get in a car crash. It's so great. Milton Williams, I mean, we can quibble, we can argue about the contract if we want to, and I think that is a worthwhile conversation, but if he does his job the way he's supposed to, again, a guy that can affect the pocket, move quarterbacks off their spot, even he's a disappointment as a first-round pick, but K'Lavon Chaisson had a nice 5-sack season for the Raiders last year. So I just feel like they just threw money at a bunch of guys, and they're like, yeah, bring some attitude, bring some nastiness. And again, this isn't the final form of what we want our defense to be, but it could be a really nice starting point.
And I think too, to me, like the biggest potential return is not even, or biggest addition they're going to get is not even a new player. It's that Christian Barmore is hopefully healthier than he was last year. Obviously, we didn't really get Christian Barmore outside of like 2 games at the end of last year, and he obviously didn't look like himself, dealing with a lot of health issues. So if he comes into this season looking more like the Christian Barmore that we thought was maybe like a 90% of Chris Jones type of player, then yeah, that next to Milton Williams is like a pretty terrifying combo, given what they were playing with last year.
If the interior pass rush with those two guys and then Keon White, wherever he ends up lining up, like I do think that there's something to be excited about with that group. And we'll talk about the investments and what they mean for like the long-term outlook of this team. But Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez just locking people down on the outside, like that is potentially in the cards. Like they have enough pieces on this defense, even if there are still some holes, for me to be able to squint and say like, all right, I can see this group being feisty, annoying, a tough out every single week for whoever's playing against them. Let's get to the swing points for the 2025 New England Patriots, where this season could potentially pivot for New England. I'll start this off. I'm just curious about how good the offensive line is going to be. I don't think it's going to be great by any stretch, but do all of these things fall into place where we have an offensive line that's like middle of the road? It would just be such a far cry from what it was a year ago. Obviously, you drafted Will Campbell in the first round. You drafted him 4th overall. We said so much of this in the pre-draft process about Will Campbell and some of his physical limitations, and you even seen some of that a little bit in the preseason. Like he's going to have to get there in pass protection just based on how he's built. But what he has been in the run game and how they have weaponized him in the run game, I'm excited about watching what him and Jared Wilson potentially look like next to one another. Garrett Bradbury is a stopgap center. We know that. But then you have Morgan Moses at right tackle now, who is the quintessential we just need competent right tackle play for a year player that you can sign. And then you still have Mike Onwenu, who they paid a ton of money at right guard. Like this group, if they can be the 15th best offensive line in football, and we can really weaponize some of these guys in the run game with Travion Henderson, with Ramondre Stevenson, I'm excited to see how this goes. Because if this is a solid offensive line, I do think that the New England Patriots could be a compelling, interesting team for most of the season.
I just worry about how well the return on investment goes, because we've seen this before. And I brought up the Steelers earlier in the show, but it's an example that comes to my mind because it's really exciting when you draft tackles with high picks. And maybe this will happen to the Jets too, for that matter. But Broderick Jones, to this point in his career, hasn't been the guy that you wanted. Troy Fautanu didn't have a rookie season. I mean, it's football. We see this all the time where half the rookie picks in the league, maybe more, you're going to go into next year being like, well, we need him to take that step. Maybe that's Will Campbell. Maybe it's the fact that Garrett Bradbury is already struggling in camp, and that's a situation where you don't even feel good about it after making the investment, which I think most people saw coming. I think two rookies working on the left side together, Campbell and Jared Wilson. I think it'll be better than last year because it would be hard not to be, but it's easy to fall for that thing it's easy to fall for it every offseason where you're like, well, these guys are new and therefore better. And that's not always the case. It's not always that easy.
I think it just depends on the ceiling, right? Like it will be better. It like for whatever I've been a little bit hesitant about what Will Campbell might be at his best. I'm pretty confident his worst play is a lot better than what we got out of Darian Lowe last year. And even like Morgan Moses, I think is going to help. Like Jared Wilson should be some degree of upgrade for the revolving door they had at left guard last year. Like it will be some degree of better, but is it going from 32 to 26 or 32 to 19? That's kind of where it is. Yeah.
Realistically, how high do you think this unit can jump? I'd be surprised.
Like 25th.
I'd be surprised.
I think it could be better than that.
I think it can be, but I'm not betting on it to be that.
No, I think it can be better than that. I think that they can be like the 20th best offensive line in the league if things go relatively okay for this group. But I completely understand that just because you invested the resources doesn't mean that's going to happen. Derrik, what is your swing point for the 2025 New England Patriots?
It's funny that we've said a lot of like, man, there's so much new cool stuff around Drake Maye, and then also both of our swing points are like, how good is the offensive line? And then mine is just, are any of these skill players actually good? Like, Stephon Diggs is getting a little bit older at this point, and I think he was fine in Houston, but he's a little bit older coming off of some of the injuries. I think that is a little bit of a concern. Kyle Williams, I think we all liked Kyle Williams as a draft prospect, but rookie third-round pick, I'm not going to put like that much into that. Especially given all the draft picks they threw at it the last couple of years and haven't really worked out. Hunter Henry is like a fine tight end, but he's competent at best. And then at the running back position, that is actually the one I will say I have some degree of confidence in. I think TreVeyon Henderson is good. And like, that's not just the preseason stuff. He was the guy coming out of college, really explosive. And typically with a lot of those like speed-oriented backs, it's like they're kind of just home run hitters. But Henderson does have decent vision. He's tougher than it would look for a guy who is like his size. He's a really good pass protector. He's a really good pass catcher. Like it feels like he has the mix of floor and explosiveness you want. But in terms of the actual pass catchers, we'll see.
I can get there with this group, though. Like, if Kyle Williams is competent as like a number 2 outside receiver by the time we get to the middle of this season, if Steph Diggs still has something left in the tank, if Hunter Henry is just Hunter Henry again, and if TreVeyon Henderson makes good on some of the flashes that we've seen, I think the pass protection point is a really important one. Like, some of these guys who come in as these explosive backs don't contribute in the passing game because they struggle in pass protection. TreVeyon Henderson, he'll put his head in there. Right. He is not afraid in those moments, and he plays with good awareness in those situations. Like, I'm excited about what he can be in that role. And so same with the offensive line, where I don't think we can necessarily bank on this group being anything, but there is a path there for them to sneak up on people and surprise us a little bit.
I still think it almost completely hinges on Diggs, to be honest with you. Not to be like functional, because this same group of players cobbled together 3,000 passing yards last year. Like, they played full seasons and they caught 60 balls or whatever. But for this thing to ascend, I think it depends almost entirely on what Stephon Diggs has left in the tank. And he doesn't need to be an all-pro. He doesn't need to be close to what he was at his best in Buffalo. But you still need a wide receiver 1. Even if he's one of the worst wide receiver 1s in the NFL, you still need that guy. And Diggs had 500 yards when he got hurt halfway through the year last year. Like,
he was playing fine. He still had it.
He was playing fine. And so he's older, and I would say the same thing about Stephon that I said about Tyreek earlier, other than the fact that he's also coming off of an injury to his knee, not his wrist, like his legs, which he uses to get down the field. So I'm a little less confident that Stephon Diggs can tap back into the fountain of youth, but If he does, then I think that matters a lot.
The fact that he's just been on the field and practicing from the start of training camp, like this
It's
has not been
very
any sort of
impressive.
ramp up
Yeah.
period. Like he has been part of this for most of the summer. And I do think that removes a little bit of the ambiguity about what is he coming off of the ACL. Maybe he's not 100%, but some of these guys, it's like, we're hoping he'll be ready for week 1. You know, we're optimistic. He's hit all the benchmarks on the timeline as part of the recovery process. There's been none of that with Stephon Diggs. Like Mike Vrabel got pissed off last week when somebody asked him if there was a chance that Diggs would miss week 1. He's like, what are you talking about? He's been out here practicing the entire time. And I think Diggs said something where it wasn't a crazy question from whoever asked it, but they dismissed the idea entirely because he has been so healthy this offseason despite coming off of that ACL. So that part of it has gone as good as it possibly could have so far. Derrik, what is keeping you up at night about the 2025 New England Patriots?
There are parts of this defense I really like. Obviously, if Christian Barmore's healthy, Milton Williams, I think, was a fine swing. Keon White, I absolutely adore in terms of his play style. But off the edge on third down, I'm a little bit dubious of what's going on here. Like, Harold Landry is okay, but that, again, felt more like I know this guy. I just want him in the building to help us establish some stuff type of player. Clavin Chason, I know he had 5 sacks last year. I think that was as fake as it gets. And then after that, you just don't have that many guys. Like, it's like Anthony Jennings, who I love Anthony Jennings on 2nd and 4.
He might not
the
make
edge.
the team.
Yeah,
like that. He was playing in the 4th quarter of the preseason game.
Because all he can do is set the edge. And, like, he's really good at that. But he doesn't really get after the passer whatsoever. And so, like, they just don't have a lot outside of these guys. And, again, I really like Keon White, and he is, like, by definition, an edge player, but he's 285 pounds. He's going to go through you. He's not going around you. And so I just wonder if they have enough of the quickness, enough of the speed that you would want on a 3rd and 7 to really get after the quarterback.
I'm really hoping with better interior players, we can see Keon White maintain some of the flashes that we saw from him early in the season. Like I am still a pretty big Keon White believer with better players around him. And so I'm really hoping that Christian Barmore coming back and Milton Williams getting dropped into the mix here can give us a better version of Keon White. Speaking of Milton Williams, my keeping me up at night about the Patriots, it's not that big because I don't think the downside is that significant with some of the deals that they've handed out. I just worry that when we look at some of the investments that they've made in free agency, these are going to be contracts a year from now where none of them are good contracts. Every single one of them are like, maybe we were a little bit aggressive in doing that. Like Milton Williams, I think, is a good player in the role that he was in with the Eagles last year. Now you are asking him to be a centerpiece of your defense in a full-time role. And what he got paid in free agency, there's no way, there's almost no possible way unless he's Chris Jones for this to be a positive ROI for the Patriots. And it's okay to do that every once in a while when you're a team that doesn't have a lot of talent and has a load of cap space, but eventually you're going to need guys you're getting surplus value on somewhere along the way. And I think that Milton Williams contract, the deal they handed out to Carlton Davis, even in the moment, that was one where it's like, we're handing out contracts to 3rd contract corners when we're multiple years away. Like, how does that deal fit into what the timeline is supposed to be for the Patriots? And I know that they have an astronomical amount of cap space. They have like $56 million, I believe, right now that they'll be able to carry over, even though they don't have much cap space next year. So this isn't something that's really going to be preventing you from doing much next offseason if you still want to do it. But you still shouldn't be in the business of handing out contracts that you're going to be regretting within a calendar year. And a little bit of me is worried that that's where we're going to be with some of the deals that the Patriots handed out.
The thing that set off the alarm bell for me was, remember, Milton Williams was a Carolina Panther for like 90 seconds. And then the Patriots were like, what's that? All right, we'll give you this much more. And Milton Williams, rightly so, was like, yeah, never mind. I'm a Pat. Let's do this. $104 million. And when you do that, like when you leapfrog another team and take what was going to be a done deal off the table to get a guy, that to me screams, or at least it better scream, that you have such a clarity of vision for who this guy is and what he's going to do. And he's going to be our Chris Jones. And that's why it's okay that Chris Jones is the only defensive tackle in the NFL that makes more money than him. And that's contract size, salary, and guarantees. Like, he's right below Chris Jones in everything. And if you just did that because you had the money to burn, I think that's really stupid. Even if you could afford it, I think that's really stupid, where you're just like, well, we got to do something. Or not, or you could shore up something else. You could go sign 2 or 3 B-level edge rushers instead of just spending that money to say that you did. Now, if Milton Williams really is that guy, then we can that's great. And I do think he's a good player, but the process alarmed me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that there was that level of intentionality to it. I think that was the best player available in free agency, and we have $100 million in cap space. And I think because free agency has gotten worse, the quality of free agency has gotten worse, and teams have gotten smarter, we have forgotten that the history of free agency is just littered with terrible contracts. And I don't think these are going to be terrible necessarily, but this idea of we are paying the 10th best player at his position, like the first best player at his position, that's like 2012 free agent thinking and spending. And I think there was a lot of that going on for the Patriots. Again, they have a ton of money. We'll see if it actually hampers things that they can do moving forward. But that was the general vibe to the free agency period for the Patriots. It was old school in a bad way. I mean that pejoratively. I said this, you need to find value somewhere in order to offset some of this. And if they, by the end of the season, have a quarterback, a left tackle, a superstar corner, and a Kyle Williams that surprises us on rookie deals, that's fine. Like, that combination of everything is okay, but you need to hit on draft picks and find value somewhere when you're not getting value on some of these big money players that you're signing. It's just going to be really hard for those guys to give you, again, positive return on those contracts because the contracts are so rich. Dave, what are you watching in the first month of the season for the New England Patriots?
So I talked a lot about Mike Vrabel's attitude with the additions on defense, but Mike Vrabel's not going to call this defense. That would be Terrell Williams, who comes over from Detroit. He was only in Detroit for a year after leaving Mike Vrabel's Tennessee staff with the Titans, though. He was the D-line coach there with Vrabel for several years. But this is his first time calling a defense, being the ultimate authority on that side of the ball. Obviously, Vrabel's going to be heavily involved, but Vrabel's not a game day play caller. So I'm just curious, basically, to see what it looks like. I saw talking to reporters at training camp. He very, very, as you might expect, he's like, we're going to be violent. We're going to fly to the ball. We're going to do all that. Like, like we've heard from every defensive coordinator ever. But what does that actually look like? What DNA path, I guess, are you going to follow? I'm curious to see.
Me too, because what they did coverage-wise, they played a decent amount of man when Mike Vrabel was in Tennessee with Shane Bowen on third down. Like, they were a pretty heavy man coverage team, but not to the extent that Aaron Glenn's Lions teams were. And so how heavily they decide to lean into that, especially because of the corner talent that they have, Derrik, that'll be a big question I have as we're watching the early part of this year. Like, what is the identity and how in your face we're putting hands on you is it going to be?
And they should, because the Titans also, when Shane Bowen was calling the plays, when Terrell Williams and Mike Vrabel were there, they did do also a good amount of we're sending sim pressures, we're doing all a lot of the stuff that we've talked about with the modern defenses, and they did a lot of that. But again, when you have, the third and ninth best outside cornerbacks in the league together, just play man, just run together with people. There's no need to do all this other fancy stuff. I think the reason we've seen a lot of that other stuff in the league is there just aren't as many corners who can run with guys in man coverage. But when you have 2 of them, just do it. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And especially if the pass rush, especially from the interior, is as good as we want it to be and can. If we're playing a bunch of man and the interior is immediately flushing quarterbacks out of the pocket and we're just going into scramble drill mode, if you just hope that you can throw a couple of loopers to make sure you go catch the quarterback, that is a good way to have good third down defense.
Yeah, and I think that we always try to say it should be an expression of your players. Those are the players that they have. So I'm really looking forward to what this ends up looking like. One thing to mention here, Kyle Duggar is apparently on the trade block. Jordan Schultz reported that a little bit earlier today.
Interesting.
And so we'll see what happens there, but he may be one of the odd men out if they are kind of changing their identity of what they want to be defensively. My answer to this is, when I'm watching the first month of the season, is just the offensive version of what they've just said. What is a Josh McDaniels offense in 2025? Like, what is Josh McDaniels' gap year that he spent, kind of figuring out what the next version of this would be with him as an offensive coordinator? What is the final expression of that? I don't know the answer. Like, are we going to see a little bit of evolution? Are we going to see a little bit more flexibility? Like, what are the ideas that Josh McDaniels is trying to channel in his next go around as an offensive coordinator, Derrik? I'm very excited to see what that might mean.
I don't know either. I think there are two things that I definitely want to say about it. First of all, Josh McDaniels is used to being able to put a lot on the quarterback, and we've seen that when he can't do that, whether it's in Denver or with the Las Vegas the last a couple of years ago, the offense suffers for it. I think Drake Maye can handle that though. Like even in the Alex Van Pelt offense last year, they put a decent amount on his shoulders in terms of being able to see the field pre-snap and get everybody aligned and all that stuff. And so I think putting that on his shoulders, there's going to be some amount of ups and downs because he's a 22-year-old second-year player, but I think he can at least handle it. And I think that unlocks the offense. I also just want to see how much they run Drake Maye. Like Drake Maye had 500-600 rushing yards last year, but almost all of it was scrambles. And that's probably going to be part of the offense again. But do they weaponize him a little bit more on 3rd and 2 or in the red zone or whatever it is? Like that is the part of it that I kind of want to see a little bit more.
Dave, in your mind, what counts as a successful season for the New England Patriots?
I thought up a more specific example than the one I told y'all during pre-production, and it goes like this. At some point in like late October, maybe even mid-November. Yeah, they play the Jets in mid-November. Whatever TV show you prefer to watch, whatever morning show that talks about the NFL, somebody's going to look up and go, don't look now, but the New England Patriots have won their last 3 games. Why isn't anybody talking about this team? That is a successful season for the New England Patriots. If Drake Maye is good and this team is frisky late in the year and somebody's saying, nobody knows that the Pats have won 3 out of 5 and they're above 500 in November, that would be a successful season for the Patriots.
Yeah, this team again is like beyond wins and losses to me. Is Drake Maye like a dude in these better circumstances? That's the number one thing for me, because I think that will drive exactly what you're talking about, Dave. And then other than that, what sort of building blocks are we looking at with these young players? Are we at a spot by the end of the 2025 season where Drake Maye feels like a dude, and then you've got 8 to 10 guys that you feel good about rolling into 2026? Maye, Barmore, Gonzalez, Keon White, Milton Williams, 2 or 3 of the rookies hit, the offensive line gels, and it's like, okay, we have a foundation here. We have something to move forward with. I think that combined with Maye taking a significant step and being one of those dudes, that is a successful season for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same formula for me. Dig the defense out of whatever gutter they fell into last year, and then Drake Maye. I think we're so used to seeing the year 2 jump being the Lamar Jackson MVP, that type of jump. That's probably not going to happen. But I think last year Drake Maye was 15th or 16th in QBR. If he has a season that gets him to like 11th, and we see a little bit of that progress, and we're like, okay, he is one of those guys, that's an easy win, regardless of, again, whether they get into the playoffs or not. Doesn't really matter to me.
All right. That is all we've got for the AFC East. We will be back with our next division preview tomorrow. I believe it is the NFC South, which I'm looking forward to that one. I know it's kind of a weird division, but I'm excited to talk about the Panthers. I'm excited to talk about the Falcons. And, this is a Bucs team that has been very good. We won't mention the Saints. I think that's probably the outlier here and the teams we're looking forward to chatting about. But a lot of stuff to get to tomorrow. Very excited about that. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for watching the Athletic Football Show. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with us. Like and comment on this video, and we'll see you next time.